Every prison cell has echoes, every police report a missing line, every victim a voice that refuses to be forgotten. These are not just tales of crime and punishment, they are fragments of lives, choices, and the secrets that society tried to bury. Subscribe now and join us as we reopen the files, retrace the evidence, and uncover the stories they never wanted you to hear. If you think the worst men can't change, you haven't been inside San Quentin. The steel doors slam like thunder. Inside California's oldest prison, the air hums with tension. Decades of anger, regret, and silence pressed against concrete walls. Every corridor smells of bleach and time. Men here have seen things most can't imagine. Murderers, gang leaders, lifers. The kind of people society forgot. But on a quiet morning in 2010, something impossible began in the middle of that chaos. Chris Redlitz wasn't a prison guard. He wasn't a cop or a lawyer. He was a venture capitalist from San Francisco, a man who'd made millions investing in startups. He'd walked into San Quentin expecting to talk for an hour and leave. Instead, what he saw made him stay for a decade. The inmates sat in neat rows inside a converted classroom, men in blue uniforms with CDCR stenciled across their backs. Some were tattooed from wrist to neck. Some had been locked up since before the internet existed. And yet when Chris spoke about entrepreneurship, they leaned forward, eyes sharp, minds awake, hungry for something no one had ever offered them before. A chance to be more than their worst mistake. After that talk, one inmate stood up. His voice shook, but his words didn't. "Mr. Redlitz," he said, "if people like you won't see us as human, how can the world ever forgive us?" That question hit harder than any crime story Chris had ever read. He went home that night to his wife, Beverly Parenti, and said, "We have to do something." Together, they built The Last Mile, a program inside San Quentin that would teach inmates coding, business, and the language of innovation. No internet, no computers connected to the outside world, just faith, logic, and the belief that redemption could be written in lines of code. It started with 6 men and a single idea: to turn time served into something more meaningful. The warden thought it was crazy. The guards laughed. Even some inmates didn't believe it. But soon, strange things began to happen behind those walls. The same hands that once broke laws started typing JavaScript. Men who'd spent years fighting learned to debug instead. They built apps that simulated real-world businesses. They pitched ideas to real investors through recorded video sessions. In a place built to destroy ambition, ambition came back to life. But change never comes easy in a system built on punishment. Not everyone wanted the program to succeed. Some officers called it a waste of taxpayer money. Others believed these men didn't deserve a second chance. One day, an anonymous complaint almost shut The Last Mile down. The reason? Too much hope. Still, Redlitz pushed forward. "You can't reform a system," he said, "if you never give people tools to build something better." By 2014, word about the program spread beyond the walls. Silicon Valley executives started visiting, skeptical at first, then stunned. One CEO left in tears after an inmate presented a full business plan that could have come straight out of Stanford. One of the participants, a man named Kenyatta Leal, had been serving a life sentence for a crime he committed as a teenager. Through The Last Mile, he learned coding, public speaking, and how to rebuild the self the world had erased. When he finally got parole, he walked out not as an ex-convict, but as a software developer. His first job was in San Francisco. When he logged into his computer for the first time, he stared at the glowing screen, trembling. "All those years," he said, "I was locked in a box. But this is freedom." That moment went viral. Newspapers picked it up. The idea of prisoners turning into tech developers shocked the world. But for Redlitz and Beverly, it was only the beginning. Because behind the code and success stories, a darker truth was still waiting. A system that didn't want change, and a society unsure how to forgive. And when one powerful name inside the prison system decided to push back, everything the last mile had built was suddenly at risk. The noise of San Quentin never stopped. Doors clanging, radios buzzing, guards shouting counts through echoing halls. But inside the last mile classroom, a different sound was rising. The rhythmic tapping of keyboards. The noise of possibility. By 2015, the program had grown from a small idea into a revolution behind bars. Inmates who once spent their days waiting for parole hearings now debated app design and data structures. Every line of code was an act of rebellion, not against the law, but against hopelessness. But outside that room, the world wasn't ready to believe redemption could live behind razor wire. A new warden arrived, one who believed the program was too idealistic. Funding was cut. Access to classroom materials slowed. Guards joked that coding wouldn't save anyone in here. Chris and Beverly didn't stop. They drove to the prison every week, sometimes waiting hours at checkpoints just to teach a single session. "You have to fight to change the narrative," Chris said. "Hope doesn't come cheap." The men kept coding. One inmate built a mock-up for a platform helping parolees find jobs after release. Another created a business plan for an app that connected low-income students with remote mentors. Each idea was born from pain, but fueled by purpose. Then came the first real test. A Silicon Valley investor offered to review the inmates' projects, remotely. No direct contact, just recorded presentations. The prison administration hesitated. "You want the outside world to see these people as tech developers," one officer said. "They're lifers." But the presentations went through. The footage showed men in blue uniforms standing confidently before whiteboards, explaining product roadmaps like startup founders. One of the investors, a veteran software executive, later said, "I've seen people with Ivy League degrees who don't pitch this well." That clip went viral. Suddenly the last mile wasn't just a prison experiment. It was a movement. Journalists wanted in. Universities called. Lawmakers visited. But with attention came pressure. Bureaucracy tightened, security protocols multiplied, and the same system that punished these men now wanted to claim their success. Chris fought quietly behind the scenes to protect the integrity of the program. He refused to let it turn into a headline stunt. "They're not a story," he said. "They're people rebuilding their lives." Beverly expanded the initiative to other prisons, training more instructors and scaling the model nationwide. Soon, the last mile became the first program in US history to turn inmates into qualified software engineers ready to work in the tech industry upon release. But the success came with heartbreak. Some of the men who had built their identities around this new purpose were denied parole, told that transformation wasn't proof enough. They had to go back to cells, knowing freedom existed but still out of reach. And yet, they kept teaching others. The code lived on. Inside San Quentin, the glow of the monitors became a symbol. Faint, flickering, but alive. For the first time, the prison felt less like an ending and more like a beginning. What no one knew, however, was that one graduate's story was about to push the last mile into a national spotlight and force America to confront what redemption truly means. The morning air outside San Quentin tasted different, not just of salt and fog, but of second chances. For years, the men inside had been building something no one believed possible. Now, that quiet work was changing lives far beyond the prison walls. When the first group of graduates was released, Silicon Valley didn't quite know what to make of them. Men who had spent decades behind bars were walking into offices filled with standing desks, espresso machines, and glass walls that looked out over the bay. The world moved fast. But these men had spent years learning how to move with purpose. Kenyatta Leal, one of the earliest graduates, remembered his first day at his new job in tech. He said the sound of his keyboard was the same as it had been in San Quentin. But this time, the code led somewhere. His co-workers didn't look at his past, they looked at his work. It was clean, efficient, and human. Across California, the last mile expanded into more prisons. Women's facilities joined. Youth detention centers called. Every classroom followed the same ritual. Blue shirts, no internet, old computers. But something powerful was happening. Men and women who had once believed their lives were over were building platforms for education, finance, and mentorship. In one session, an inmate stood before his peers and said, "I used to destroy lives. Now I build things that help them." The room went silent. Then everyone applauded. Beverly Parenti watched the program grow with tears in her eyes. She'd once believed success meant funding startups. Now it meant helping people rebuild their souls. But with national attention came a new kind of pressure. Critics claimed the program was a publicity stunt. Politicians questioned funding. One TV anchor asked bluntly, "Do murderers deserve coding lessons?" Chris Redlitz didn't flinch. "No one is the same person they were 20 years ago," he said. "We can either let prisons destroy potential or help it rebuild society." The numbers spoke louder than any speech. Over 90% of the last-mile graduates never returned to prison, a record almost unheard of in America's correctional system. They became coders, mentors, entrepreneurs, and advocates. Some even came back, not as inmates, but as teachers. And yet, the greatest change wasn't in statistics. It was in perception. The story of the last mile began to shift how people saw rehabilitation. It wasn't about punishment anymore. It was about transformation. One quiet afternoon, Chris visited San Quentin again. The same corridor, the same cold echo. But this time, the classroom was brighter. Sunlight pouring through dusty windows, laughter mixing with the click of keyboards. An older inmate looked up and said, "You gave us a way to prove we're more than our past." Chris smiled. "No," he said. "You proved it yourselves." Today, the last mile operates in multiple states. Its graduates now work in companies that once would have never opened their doors to them. Some have started their own businesses. Others mentor at-risk youth, breaking the same cycles that once trapped them. Inside San Quentin, the program's original classroom still stands. The blue glow of computer monitors lights up faces of new students, people writing code, writing change, and rewriting what redemption means in America. From the outside, San Quentin looks the same. High walls, razor wire, watchtowers. But inside, something revolutionary hums beneath the surface. The sound of keys clicking, the rhythm of hope, the quiet coding of second chances. Because redemption isn't just freedom, it's creation. If you think this story was intense, the next one will leave you speechless. Subscribe for more true crime stories that'll keep you on the edge of your seat.